What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files podcast, where we talk about our favorite fantasy series and topics. We are your co-hosts, Spencer and Gabe, and today we are diving back into the world of the Dresden Files to talk about Summer Night and Death Masks. We will be going into full spoilers, so if you haven't read these, pause and come back later after you read them. But first, before you go, please support the channel by liking this video and subscribing down below. You can also keep up with all of our content over on our Twitter page at Files Fantasy. We are super excited to announce that for our next book discussion, we will be reading The Black Prism, Book 1 of the Lightbringer series by Brent Weeks. Before that episode, though, we will be doing an episode with the author of the new urban fantasy series, Oath Broken, discussing the first book, Chaos Reigns. We will be doing about 30 or so minutes of completely spoiler-free talk before we get into the dirty details. So don't worry if you haven't read it, just join us for it. But definitely tune in as soon as you see it pop up, because we will be giving away 2 codes for free audiobook versions of Chaos Reigns, and we will tell you how to win them in the video. All right, well, with all that being said, let's get talking about these 2 wonderful books. Something that I kind of playing around with, I think that we would like is, what if we, as we read these, we rated them all together? So like the first ones we rated, like we liked 3 the best, and we liked 2, and then we liked 1.
Yep.
And then we could rate these like, did we like Death Masks more or Summer Night more?
Yeah.
And then put them into a list where we have them all in like a top rate, you know what I mean? Like all 15 books rated from greatest to like our favorites.
That would be cool.
Least.
And we could see the ultimate favorite at the end.
Yeah, it'd be sweet. So first off, how would you rate Summer Night or Death Masks? Which one did you like more?
Oh, I would probably say that I like Death Masks more than I like Summer Night. Not that of course, both of them are incredible books, but I think on the scale of the characters involved and kind of the plot that plays out, I would say Death Masks would probably be my favorite of the 2.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think I really like Summer Night for kind of the new characters that it brings in, and it kind of introduces us to this whole other side of like the supernatural world. However, I think Death Masks is so much more important for what happens later in the series.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of kind of fallout from Summer Night besides Harry killing Aurora, but I don't want to go into like too big of spoilers or anything, but it comes up in later books, but it doesn't have the same like lasting impact that Death Masks have. Or has. So yeah, I would totally agree. I think I would rate Death Masks over Summer Night. So now if we were to rate all 5 books that we've read so far, on the last podcast of the Dresden Files, we decided that we liked like Grave Peril, and then Full Moon and Stormfront, or maybe it was like, it might have been Grave Peril, Stormfront, and Full Moon.
Yep.
But where would we, if we were rating all 5 of them at the same time, would that change much? Would it just go like, because for me it would go like Death Mask, it would just go in backwards order.
That's kind of what I would think too. Death Mask as the best, number 5, and then Summer Night, and then I would probably put Full Moon as the 3rd down from that, and then the other 2 are kind of a jumble, so they would be the last on the list for me anyways. But yeah, pretty much the same.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I like that a lot. All right, so like I said, both of these books are kind of heavy hitters. Like these books are really where the world starts to open up. And we saw it a little bit in Grave Peril, that third book, but these just open up the entire world, and Harry is starting to get noticed by a lot of these bigger supernatural beings.
Players. Yeah.
Right. So yeah. Anyway, obviously we enjoyed these books. I don't think either of them would be like bottom of the pile. Yeah.
For sure.
I don't have too much to say about Jim Butcher so far, other than in these books, it's clear that he's really on a roll. Yeah. And that he's really like coming into, I don't know if I'd say his prime, but he's really getting rolling. Like this, what we see as far as storytelling and character growth and just some of the deeper elements that are taking place in these books is kind of what we can expect for the rest of the series from here on out, right? Yep. I think the books kind of stay at a similar pace, especially Death Masks. That really like sets the standard for the rest of the series. Yeah. And I think that you could read Death Masks and understand what the rest of the series is going to be like. Would you agree?
I would, yeah, for sure.
I think it's got a really good pace. It's got a really good mystery. Like from here on out, pretty much every book has some sort of little twist at the end. And we get that twist in Death Masks when we find out that Father Vincent was killed, and instead Cassius has taken his place. And so I think that it really sets the standard there. The other thing that starts to become, and this is going to sound like a bad thing, but it's really not. It's like my favorite thing, is the books, the book endings really start to become uniform from here on out in the way that we get to the end of the book, the big battle happens, and then Harry just kind of wraps everything up, kind of going from like person to person to person, like everybody who was involved in the story, and kind of wrapping up their individual story for that book.
Yeah.
And especially with the audiobooks, because the narrator does such a good job with just kind of the tone of voice he uses for the ending specifically. Yep. I really love these endings, and I think that both Summer Night, not as much as Death Masks, but definitely Death Masks, you really start to get that Dresden Files ending where it just like tugs on your heart a little bit, and he's like wrapping everything up.
It 100%.
Yes, 100%. So yeah, I love all the epilogues, the last chapters. Something else we see is the narration gets so much better.
Yeah,
did you?
Yep. Oh, for sure.
For sure, man.
Yep, 100%. And like you have the notes here, it's when we kind of Butcher moved over to Penguin Audio, right? Like that's when I feel like that, however they changed it up, the production value, the equipment that they use, whatever else, but it's a huge, massive difference. Difference.
Right. Yeah. I would be very interested to hear what the difference in the two companies was, because in Summer Night you get you can hear James Marsters kind of like
lick his lips, right?
Yeah,
he does that a lot, and got the dry saliva. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you can hear him lick his lips, and you can hear him like kind of breathe in between takes and stuff.
Yep.
Or in between sentences.
Yeah.
And man, when they went over to Penguin Audio, that's like as good as it gets from there on out, like in a good way. Like it's it stays that same standard all
the way up until even the brand new ones. Yeah.
Right. And I'd be incredibly interested to know if they just had Marsters record on different equipment, or if they spent more time in editing and stuff like that. Yep. Who knows? Yeah, the difference between Summer, even I was gonna say like Grave Peril and Death Masks, but even the difference between Summer Night and Death Masks is staggering. Oh yeah, the audiobooks now start and end with an awesome 50s noir detective music, which does so much for me. I am so horny for this music. Did you kind of notice that while reading Death Mask, the music they play?
Absolutely.
It's just that one extra thing. It's that one extra like cherry on the top that just adds so much ambiance to the ending. And they start putting it in like the last maybe 3 or 4 sentences of the ending, and it just gives you this sense of like completion and like it's oh man,
this is the end.
Yeah, and it also like, you know, the music is almost like a kind of propellant in the way it makes me want to read the next one now. Yeah, so I really appreciated that. You know, there wasn't really any new storytelling things that he tried with this book other than kind of the ending. He made the ending a little bit more polished and stuff like that. But the only other thing I have put down for this is, do you remember in the last episode we were talking about the idiot rule? How Murphy is kind of like the idiot.
Drilling Dresden, like, well, why does this happen? Why does this happen? And it's to inform us.
It's to inform us of how the world works so that we are not felt like the idiot having to ask these questions. We have someone in the book being the quote unquote idiot to ask these questions. And Billy the werewolf is the idiot. He does the idiot rule in this. When we first come into Summer Night, we see him asking Harry all these questions about the Fae because, and that was something I thought was so interesting, and it made me really appreciate the idiot rule. So I started these books about like halfway through the series, and they're talking about the Fae and all this other stuff, and I'm like, I have no idea what the Fae is, and it was so hard. It was so hard to like wrap my brain around what that was. And so when I finally started from the beginning and went to Summer Night, it was extremely beneficial to have Billy be the person asking the questions, because as complicated as the Fae are, like they're probably like one of the most complicated things about this series.
Very intricate social status.
Yeah, they have all these different rules and rules of hospitality and all these other things you have to understand to fully grasp what the Fae are. And so it really made me appreciate the idiot rule, having Billy there to ask these questions. Yeah, let's talk about, you know, we have like a lot of world building here, but mostly what stood out was this is our first foray into the Never Never. And we kind of get to see what this thing is. Do you feel like you can explain it, like what exactly the Never Never is?
Possibly, yeah. So I mean, you know, you have these two different branches, right? You've got the world that Dresden lives in, Harry, it's the modern world, and then you have this other side, which is the Fae realm or the spirit world or whatever else, and he calls it the Never Never, and it's basically an alternate realm of reality that coexists with our realm in such a way that like, and when you see the Never Never, like you know, it's a world that all the Fae live in, right? Mab's there, and her summer queens and her court, and the summer court and all that is over there, and so it's like even now, like I think about it, and it's still hard for me to like put my finger on it, right? Like how, you know, how it works, but I know that, you know, it's alongside of our normal world. It lives alongside of the regular realm, and it's somewhere that that Harry can access, right? You know, you can get there and they can come here, and it's connected in such a way. It's like I don't know if they talk about it in these two books, but he says something like it's connected along. Yeah, no, that's in different books. I'll not talk about that now, but
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he can, I think I think what you were getting at is traveling through the Never Never.
Yeah.
So I think that's explained a little bit in these books, and I won't go into super big spoilers or anything, but essentially the Never Never, like Gabe was saying, runs alongside ours, but it is not the same shape.
Yeah.
And so you can go into the Never Never, walk 5 feet, come back out and be in a completely different state.
Yeah, yep, that's it.
And so, you know, we kind of see this, it'll get explained later why that is, but we see that you can travel through the Never Never, and that it's this place where pretty much any type of magical creature that exists there. And they have to expend energy to come over into our world. And that energy is not fueled by, it's made up of ectoplasm, the bodies that they create for themselves, and they fuel it with magic. And what the ectoplasm does is it creates a solid body for them. But if they don't have magic coming from the Never Never to their body, to their ectoplasm body, turns into goop.
Yep, and then it evaporates in like 15 seconds.
Right, and so that's kind of what we see with, you know, Ronald Reuel, the Summer Knight, getting murdered. There was all this goo found at the crime scene, and then it just went away. And so it was kind of like this weird blip in the police report. And that's when Harry understood that something must have come through the Never Never and
pushed him down and then done the rest. Yeah.
Right. So that's something to keep an eye on for future books. The Never Never becomes a huge part of this series. And it's something in a future episode, when it gets explained a little bit more, we should take some time to completely explain it, because I think it's like it's kind of like a foundation for some of the future books. Like
I would say, what would you say that Changes would be a good book for that, right? Because I feel like in Changes there's a lot of travel and there's a lot of kind of explanation. Yeah,
either Changes or Proven Guilty, because they go into the Fey world and Proven Guilty. So that might be another part where we talk about it
for sure.
But yeah, I think that'll be fun to talk. We'll have a section on one of our future episodes about the Never Never and how it works. But for now, I mean, if you guys read these books, then you probably don't need us to really explain it that much, but it might be worth talking about later. We also learn about the Fey courts and the effect that they have on the world. We learn that there is like the summer court and the winter court, and they battle basically every year or during every changing of the season.
Yeah.
And what that, and this is another good example of what I think is so interesting about this series, is that their battle in the Never Never has effects, like actual effects on our world, like them, like winter defeating summer makes it winter in our world, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that's always super cool about this series, and I think comes up in later books, is that, you know, as above, so below. Yep. And so like these things that are happening in the Never Never, they're not just things that Harry can ignore all the time, because they have an effect in a spiritual way, but then because of that effect, that it also affects like the physical world. I'm not explaining that very well.
No, but you are that okay. That's it. Absolutely. Yeah. It's all connected very tightly without seeming so, right? Like yeah, it is.
And so, yeah, we learned some more about these Fey courts and kind of their leadership. Do you want to talk about like the different tiers of leadership in the Fey courts?
Sure. Yeah. So you know, you have your court, you have the winter court, right, which is Mab, then you have your summer court, which is Titania. Those are both the winter queens. Mab's the queen of Eric Darkness. Did they ever say what Titania is? Like, is there a name after hers that is? Because I can't. Doesn't.
I don't know.
my head.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you have those two queens, and then you have the ladies, right? So you got Maeve, and then you've got Aurora, which would be the two summer ladies in these books. And then of course after that you have who was before, which would be Mother Winter and Mother Summer. So you've got these three kind of reigning bodies over each of their own individual courts. And I guess that's like the major hierarchy. And then of course you've got your fairy nobles, right, in each court, and you've got kind of a ranking system there. And I think a little bit in Summer Night. Yep, the knights. Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course, you got the Winter Knight, Summer Knight, which is a mortal champion that that each court declares and kind of gives this mantle of power to, and whatnot. So they of course come into play as well. And then like I said, you got your noble, kind of nobles and their royalty and this, that, and it just goes down from there. But I think that's really it for the major like players in each court, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's interesting how power is transferred basically anytime a knight dies, the power goes back to
the queen.
It's either the queen or the lady. I can't remember. I think it's whoever is closest or something. Yeah. And the power goes back to them, and then they decide who the next knight is. And I'm sure something similar would happen when actually we find out later on in the series what happens, but a similar thing happens when a lady dies or when a queen dies.
Yep.
And essentially if Mab died, the mantle would then go to Maeve, and Maeve would be the new Mab.
Yep.
And so it's kind of this line of succession. And I'd be really interested to find out what would happen if a mother died. Because then
I've always wanted to know more and to get more info on the mothers and kind of their status, what they do. We know just a little bit, just a tiny bit about them and their place in this world. But I've always been extremely interested in Mother Winter and Mother Summer.
Yeah, I think that would be cool. I have a feeling that they're gonna play a bigger part in the like closer to the end of the series.
I hope so.
Because I would really like to know more about them and what happens if they die, or like how much power they actually have. Because we see, we see in Summer Night how much power Mab and Titania has, because Harry goes up to the clouds and he opens his sight and he sees like all this power they have.
Yeah.
But what would happen if he opened his sight looking at the mothers?
Exactly. And I've always thought, and again, this has kind of been later books, but like there's a point where we get to meet Mother Summer and Mother Winter in a more I guess a better environment. And from what you see, like it makes me think that they have this power that has so much more depth, right? Than like Mab's powerful, like extremely powerful. So is Titania. But Mother Winter and Mother Summer make me think that they have more of like I don't know the right word. I don't know the way that I could describe it. They just seem really powerful, like powerful in the sense of like, and again, I'm trying not to give away stuff. I think if I could, I could describe it.
Like if Mab is like, and I could be totally wrong about this because we don't know how much power they have.
Yep.
But I kind of think like if Mab is a fire hose, like extremely powerful and focused, I kind of feel like the mothers might be like an ocean.
Yeah,
where
for sure.
They're not like
not focused, and they can't affect like so much in one spot like a fire hose can. That's what I was thinking too. Like,
but imagine like deeper.
Exactly. Imagine like a teacher, right? Like let's say Mother Winter taught Mab, and then that teacher just retired. So you have to think that the teacher knows more and is more powerful than the student would have been, but she's just off the clock. That's right. I don't know. It's kind of a weird way to think about it, but I would.
No, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think we did a good job with that.
Yep.
Okay, let's talk about some of the new magic here. We get to see some new spells in this book. We see a binding that Elaine puts on Dresden while he's sinking in the mud. And it's a binding that they came up with when they were kids. They were like 16 or whatever. And it's the same spell that she used to hold him down while Justin Dumorn tried to enthrall him.
Yep.
And so he essentially said that what the spell is a focused cocoon of air that is holding you tight. And it's got one flaw. There's like a certain spot in the spell that he can like kind of poke and prod, and it can go away.
Yeah.
But I thought that was pretty interesting. A focused cocoon of air that like seals in place. I thought
And the way that she put it down and planned it out was so precise too. Like she sold it so well that even I thought, I was like, no way this is happening. And then Harry's like, wait, I've got this figured out.
Right. Yeah. She tells him as she's walking away, she's like, just like old times, Harry.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was it. That was the key. And he's like, wait.
He's like, she would never, and he was saying that her face was like completely blank. And he's like, man, I could see her like bombing my car in a fit of rage or like doing something else out of pique, but she would never do something like this and feel nothing. So it was like this kind of wink and a nod to like get him to realize what she was saying.
Yep.
And as soon as he realized, he's like, oh, I know how to break this spell.
Yep.
We see shape shifting from the Fae. I thought that was pretty cool. We see some of these like Fae nobles that are working for Aurora, and they shape shift into like a tree monster and I think a centaur or an ogre or something. They transform into all these things, and then Harry's dealing with them in these transformed ways throughout the book, and then at the end he's like, you know, basically drop the glamour, like I know who you are.
Yeah.
And then we see mind fog. Elaine, we find out that Elaine has made this mind fog that she put into the Walmart superstore.
Yep.
And Harry and Murphy are they do some sort of spell to make sure that it doesn't
like a charm.
them.
He gives her a charm, protecting from.
And the mind fog, it basically just stops people in place and like makes them really confused.
It reduces your cognitive thought, right? And takes away all your like normal thoughts and turns you into kind of this like zombie robot.
Right. And the interesting part about that, I thought, is when he was explaining it to Billy later on, Billy's like, wouldn't they know that something was going weird at the Walmart last night? And like Harry's saying, no, they'll just call it like a leaky gas line. And he's like, but they won't find any gas or any like fire or anything. And Harry's like, the mind fog is going to make them forget what they saw anyways.
Yeah.
And so the city is just going to try to explain it away as
and they will
mind fog. And then we get some new magic in Death Masks. We see spell suppression when he's at the Larry Fowler show.
Yep, which is cool.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of interesting. He never really does it again in future books.
Yeah.
You would think that he would. But yeah, he's kind of got this spell where he keeps all his emotions in check and kind of keeps his magic very like balanced. And so he doesn't mess up technology and stuff while he's doing that. But as we see in that first scene, when his emotions get going, he can't really control it.
Yeah.
We see an animated rubber duck when him and what's her name, Anna Belmont, they're going through it's with Susan on their way to find Anna Belmont.
Yeah.
And Susan is like, I'll first explain this spell. He's got this rubber duck and he's got something that it's tracking, like a hair or something like that. And he tapes it onto the duck, and the duck like hops its way down the hallway, leading him to wherever the other end of the hair is, right?
Yep.
And so then Susan is like super suspicious of this thing. And she says, does the duck know about stairs? And he says, more or less. I thought that was a pretty good scene.
That is good.
We see water once again grounding out magic as Harry is tied up underground by Nicodemus. We see a entropy curse known as the Barabbas Curse that originates from Nick's his like noose necktie. And what that tie does is it grants him once a year, he's able to deem someone an unescapable death. But as we find out, a Knight of the Cross can take on the responsibility of that person's death and take their place.
Yep.
And then we see Dinarian coins. We see these coins that give you a demon in your head that can transform you into a demon. What are your thoughts on the Dinarians?
They're really interesting. The whole thinking about them like being what they are, right? A fallen angel from I mean, that's it. Like really just think about like a fallen angel. But they're very interesting and they're very evil, right? They're inherently evil in the way that they work and do things. And so it's cool to see this get the Knights of the Black and Dinarians, which is their basically their cohort, right? It's like their gang of these coins that have came together to basically like just like ensue evil things, right? They just start evil. They start bad stuff. They're trying to like destroy the knights, destroy all the good in the world, yada yada yada. I think they're cool. I think as we go on to and read more, I think that there will be more description of them. It's probably better than what I'm saying.
Sure.
But and I like the thought of them.
Right. I think honestly, they're probably one of my favorite, or probably my top favorite bad guy, or at least Nicodemus is. Nicodemus is definitely like my number one favorite bad guy. But I think it's interesting how the church, the Catholic Church, has been fighting these people for like thousands of years, and they get these coins. Like every time a Dinarian dies, they drop their coin, and then the church picks up that coin with like a sacred
cloth or little
cloth, and they store these coins away to try to keep them out of circulation so that people can't pick up new coins and keep turning into Dinarians. But somehow they keep getting out and people keep getting a hold of these coins. But I just think it's interesting how like this battle has been going on for thousands of years and they've never defeated them. Like they've never been able to defeat them. Nicodemus has been there since the beginning.
He's like 2000. I mean, literally like 2 or 2,500 years old, something crazy like that.
Yeah. And so like that kind of bad guy, I'm just like, I would say he's always like kind of one step ahead of Dresden. And like even like Dresden doesn't like fight him so much as he like survives his encounters with Nicodemus. Like there really is no, I think that's what I like so much about Nicodemus is that there is no like winning. Like you just have to like get through the encounter. Like you can't really beat him.
Don't die. Just don't die.
Yeah. But also, the Knights of the Cross play a part in this where their job is not to kill the Dinarians, it's to
save them. It's to give them the option of turning away from their coin and turning away from the evil that's been imprinted upon them.
Right, because underneath the Dinarian is a human being.
Yeah,
and
it was stolen away, right? Like they've been corrupted by this coin, and they want to like give that person the option to be saved.
Right. Yeah. So basically, what happens is a person picks up a coin, they get a spirit in their head, the spirit influences them, and then tempts them with all these powers. and it can transform them into like a completely different like shape and all this different stuff. And so the Knights of the Cross, if somebody willingly gives up their coin, like Cassius did in this book, you know, they can't, they, as much as they may hate that human being for doing everything they did,
they
can't hurt him.
It's not their prerogative.
Right. And so that's something that I like a whole lot about the Dinarians, is just the interesting interplay between the Knights of the Cross. Like the Knights of the Cross have so much power over them, but also the Dinarians have like this get out of jail free card.
Yeah,
so like they can always drop their coin and go and pick up another coin.
Yep. And I think the Knights have such an unlimited amount of power, right? But, and again, this is along those lines, they have like this moral standing that has, no matter what, has to be upheld. I mean, it's, you know, you think of like God and Jesus and like people like that, right? Like it is one way and you have to follow that code. And so that if they are to wield this power and they're to have this ability and use the sword, like they cannot waver, they cannot change. And so these things are like set in stone. Therefore, you get the Dinarians, of course, you know, having a workaround about that and whatnot. But that's probably my favorite part about the Knights, right? Like they are so powerful, but with that, there's like some detriments to that power because of the fact that they hold such a power. Because without the rules and without the moral standing, they wouldn't have the power.
Right.
As many times as I said power.
I think, you know, that's something that also is so interesting about this series, Gabe, is that every major power in this series has some sort of limit or some sort of like boundaries that it has to work inside of. Like the Fae are super powerful, like super powerful, but they cannot harm mortals.
Yeah.
And they cannot lie.
Yep.
And they're also bound to things like rules of hospitality.
Yep.
And
all
like
accords.
All the accords, and someone saying their name 3 times or asking them a question 3 times. Yeah. And so, you know, there's a lot of really interesting kind of limits on what certain factions in this series can and can't do. And even even wizards have limits, like they cannot do magic that they don't believe in. Like if they honestly don't believe a certain spell is the right thing to do, they literally cannot cast that magic. And so that's why they hate like necromancers so much, is because necromancers and warlocks and stuff like really believe that whatever this evil spell is that they're casting is the right thing to do. Like they have to truly believe in it in order to cast that spell. And so then coming back around to the Knights of the Cross, I think, you know, it's so interesting because like you said, they have all this power, but when it really comes down to it, there's only certain parameters that they can work in. Like we even see in Grave Peril, Harry is holding Amarachius, and I think Leah pissed him off or something, and he goes to take a swing at her, and the light in the sword goes out, and she's like, "Oh, you just misused the sword.
Right.
Like I'm gonna take it from you," and she like grabs the sword and takes it.
And Michael's like, what just happened? What did you do? You know, like, because Michael knew, of course, what would happen, and then I remember that. That's good.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about some of our main characters here. What did you think about Harry, specifically at the beginning of Summer Night, and just kind of like, do you remember how he kind of like progressed through Summer Night?
Yeah. I mean, he, you know, when it starts off, right, he's like kind of in a very dark place. He's very secluded, right? He's very hermit-like, and his friends are worried, and this, that, and the other. And so it is, as you said, a progression, right? He slowly starts to, Billy shows up, right? And of course he's pissed at Billy. Why do you want to help me? You know, just stay away from me. I'm fine. This, that, and the other. and of course, knowing Harry, right? Like he loves his friends. He loves his friends more than anything. And so he starts to like come out of his shell a little bit and let people in and let him see what's going on. And yeah, so as the notes say, he's super broken, very, very broken over what happened in Grave Peril and that entire situation with the Red Court and Susan and whatnot. And so yeah, it's cool to see him pull himself out of that little rut that he was in.
Right. And I think the interesting thing about it too is he like you said, he does love his friends, but sometimes he gets into these funks and he is like very arrogant. Like people call him arrogant all the time. And he kind of has this spat with Billy where he's like, Billy went and got his like phone messages and stuff and told him like, you have a client who wants to talk to you.
Yep.
And he's like, that's none of your business and all this stuff. And sure enough, this attack happens where all this action is happening. People are shooting at them. And then Billy like saves his life by like Harry's like pinned down by the ghoul or whatever. And then Billy comes in, like attacks the ghoul and knocks him off Harry.
Yep.
And it's kind of this thing that makes Harry come to his senses and realize the stakes that he lives in day to day. Because Harry's world is not a kind one, especially when you're someone who knows as much about the supernatural as he does. And it seems like in this series, the more you know about the supernatural, the more in danger you are. And so Harry is kind of constantly living in this kind of under attack state of mind or state of life, really. And so for the past year or so, Harry's been trying to find a remedy for Susan to make her not a half vampire anymore.
Yep.
And he's kind of been living in this like in between world where he's just like doing his own thing and neglecting his rent and his office and all these other things. And it takes Harry's friend being there and also this literal attack on him to kind of jar him out of this. And then little by little, we see him open up. We see him go by Murphy's house
and open up to Murphy a little bit to try and help her out. Yep.
And that's another character that we see super broken from the events of Grave Peril. Harry says that she has basically been raped.
Has a psychic mauling, destroyed psychically.
And it probably doesn't help that the thing that did it took the form of Harry.
Yep.
So now every time she sees Harry, it kind of brings this like sickening feeling with it, even though he's her friend and like, they care for each other and they want to help each other. Like it must have sucked to have that happen to you. And then every time you see
you have to
Harry
face the person
Murphy,
that did it. I mean, in a metaphorical way. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So she's super broken. When Harry shows up on her doorstep, she's drinking and taking Valium, I think.
Valium, yep.
And she's not doing well, and she's looking through a photo album. It turns out that her ex-husband has just died, and he didn't even tell her he was sick. So it's tough watching these two people just so broken at the beginning of the book, like two of our favorite characters just so out of sorts. But then we see Murphy, for her it's kind of the same thing as she gets back into the action and as she gets on a mission with Harry, and he opens up to her more. They have this great scene in Walmart where she meets him there and he's like at the end of the line, like he doesn't know what to do or where to go, and so he calls Murphy. And this is kind of something we see over the rest of the series, whenever he is like at his lowest, he calls Murphy.
Yeah.
And she meets him at this Walmart, and he's like, I can't not tell you about all this stuff anymore.
Yeah.
He's like, I just need to tell you about the supernatural world so that you know what you're up against.
Yep.
And so that you know what to expect so that you don't get hurt anymore. And he just like tells her all about the supernatural world. He tells her about the White Council, the Fae, all these different forces that are in motion. It sounds like he didn't hold anything back.
Yeah. So really quick, there's a scene that I remember in that book where, and I think it's right before they sat down, or maybe it was at her. No, it was after. I think it was before that. But he says to Murphy, he's like, Murphy, I tried to make a list of the people that I trust, and it's not very big. You're it. You are it. You're the person that I trust. And then of course he goes into that, which is super cool.
Yes, exactly. I love that quote. And yeah, it's just great to see these two kind of reconnect since the events of Grave Peril, and it opens up really a whole new relationship for them, because this is where the Murphy that we didn't like goes away, and the Murphy that we do like comes into play.
Yeah.
Because, once she feels like she is included and that she knows
and is trusted fully, and
right. Yes.
And then she stops using him as a tool, which she did before.
Right, exactly. I think, she realizes that he trusts her. She realizes that he is going to give her all the information he can, and that's limited a little bit, because he does tell her, like, there are some things that I'm not going to tell you about, but that's not because I don't trust you. It's because they're friends, but basically he's telling her, like, I love you and I don't want you to get hurt, and you are like my only friend, really. Like, you are like my best friend, and the things that I tell you could get you in serious trouble. I need your help, so I'm going to tell you these things that you need to know, but there are some things I'm going to hold back. And once she knows that, once she feels like she is trusted, she really opens up and becomes the kick-ass Murphy that we love.
Yes.
And then she gets super hurt in Summer Night. And honestly, I don't remember. I actually don't remember her being in Death Masks. I'm not sure. Where she was.
That I don't know. Now that you say that either, dude, I don't know if I could like recall that.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's so weird. I'll have to look into that and see.
For sure.
Find her.
Okay, so I want to talk about Billy just for a second. I just have one thing I want to say about him, because it'll have to do with something I say later on.
Okay.
Is that, Billy the werewolf that is at the beginning of Summer Night, he mentions that he hasn't seen Harry in like several months, and that Harry has kind of been neglecting his friends, and the last time they saw him was at a football game or baseball game, some sports ball, and they're like, yeah, we haven't seen you for months. You've been neglecting your friends. And Harry's like, I've been around. And they're like, no, you haven't. And so it's kind of the point I'm trying to get across is that there's this tension between him and his friends, and even when Harry drives by, I think he's dropping Billy off or something, he sees Georgia and he sees the other alphas up there, and he just keeps driving because he doesn't want to deal with that. He knows that he's been neglecting his friends, and been like consumed with whatever else. And so there's kind of this unspoken tension there that comes up later. So let's talk about Mab a little bit. We talked about the structure of the fairy courts. She is the queen. So Maeve would be the lady, and then Mab is the queen who we meet for the first time in Summer Night, and she will become a huge part of the books. Another one of my favorite.
Yes.
You know, I don't know if I would really call her a villain. She's not exactly a villain.
Yeah, I would agree.
She's not exactly like a frenemy either.
I think inherently, right, being of the Winter Court, Mab has this what is that word? I don't know, she kind of has this demeanor, right? Where she, and people think that she's this way, but in reality, like there's several times later on where it's like she explains why she does what she does, right? And how she holds the fabric of reality together, right? Like between her and the Summer Court and Winter Court. So I think that being Winter, they're kind of shady. They got some weird stuff going on. They like to sneak around and dodge around and be kind of unfriendly. But I think at least this is what I've thought. In the end, I've always thought that Mab was like, Mab has to be there. Even if she's bad or good, like without Mab, like there wouldn't be the world. You know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. Would you say that she has a cold demeanor?
Yes, I would. She's very cold.
Yeah, I think Mab, and I think Dresden might even explain this later on, but she's not so much good or evil as much as she is simply a force of nature, like gravity.
Yep.
And so, whether you like it or not, it has to be there. Like you couldn't just, even if you're mad at gravity for, something
dropping
falling on
your
you
face or something.
Yeah, like you can't just get rid of gravity because then
and if you did get rid of gravity, the world would stop. It'd be end game for everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that is the really interesting thing about Mab is she is a force of nature personified. When she first walks into Harry's office, he said she had the kind of beauty that made people murder friends or start wars.
Yep.
I love that.
Me too.
Yeah, there's let me scroll down real quick. I got a couple of quotes of hers, I think. So when she first shows up, she's already in Harry's office, and he's coming in the door. He realizes it's unlocked. He finds her in there. He doesn't know that she's Mab yet. And she's inside his office just looking really good in like a $3,000 suit, like with a skirt and stuff. Like she's looking fantastic. No purse, which is the big tip off.
Yep.
That's funny that you remembered that. That's awesome.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But yeah, so she's in there and she's waiting on him and he's running late. And she says, I don't like to be kept waiting, so I let myself in. I almost wish I hadn't, because his place is so like destroyed,
unorganized,
and it's so messy.
Yep.
And then he like sits down and he says, "Would you like a cup of coffee or something?" And she's like, "Sounds less than sanitary."
Yeah. Yep.
Oh,
that's
my
Mab.
God,
that's Mab.
So funny. Yeah, let me see. What else do I have to say about Mab? Do you have anything you want to say about Mab?
Not much that you've already said. I think later on in the books we see a lot more of her, but I do want to just mention how powerful this meeting is. Like how powerful it is, right? That Harry's he's heard of stories, right? And myths or not myths, but like stories and these tales of, the Queen of the Winter Court or whatever else. And all of a sudden she's in his office. And the moment when he realizes, or the moment when Mab like says,
it's
like,
shocking.
They call me Mab. Like it was absolutely shocking.
Yeah.
But other than that, I don't have a lot. Just other than it had a big effect on me and how powerful the meeting was, and kind of the way that, Harry's reaction was, I think was really cool. And how like stunned and just utterly speechless he was, right? Like I'm staring at the Queen of the Winter Court.
And still in the face of that, he rolled cold iron towards her.
Yeah,
like that's who Harry is.
Yep, that's Harry. Exactly.
Yeah, did you know, I just found this out recently. Did you know that Mab and Maeve and maybe Titania are characters from the works of William Shakespeare.
No.
Isn't that crazy?
I did not know that. I'm gonna have to do some research on that.
It almost makes me want to read it. I mean, it'd be super old timey reading, but it
Still though,
sounds,
I wonder if you
because
could just like go online and like find the excerpts where they
right.
are. That would be cool because I would definitely read those.
I'm sure you could. I think
Yeah.
that everything Butcher kind of stenciled the Fae around was Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. And yeah, so that was pretty interesting. Most of the Fae characters are from the works of William Shakespeare.
I had no idea. That's super cool though. I'm gonna have to look into that. I'm definitely would like to know more, or at least the origins, I guess, or the so-called origins where Butcher got them from.
Definitely. Do you want to talk about at all how Mab has like bought this debt and like what this kind of new deal is?
Absolutely. So
sorry, what was the debt he had with Leah? Do you remember?
Yeah, so I think that the original debt with Leah, right? And I may be wrong. I'm just gonna shoot here. Was the debt when he asked for power to basically destroy Justin DeMorn, right? I mean, that was the basis of that. And so with that, he's kind of been evading this like deal. I think he may mention there's been other times where he's like pushed it off or somehow done something else to like avoid this up until now. You know, it's been many years since he's killed Justin DeMorn and whatnot, and the deal's still kind of been settled. And so when Mab shows up, right, you know, Harry's like, why is she here? Why is she here? And eventually it gets to the point where basically Mab like spills like the line is like, you know, your human debts, right? Like you sell mortgages for houses, right? You sell or something, you know, along those lines. Exactly. And then Harry's like he's like, my stomach dropped out. Like what? He's like, I know what's happening here. And apparently the Lananchi, Leah, had sold Harry's debt to Mab. And so prior to that, Harry had a year and a day that he was exempt from dealing with this. And that was from what book was that when that happened?
Grave Peril. I think.
That was Grave Peril. Yep, absolutely. So towards the end of Grave Peril, there's a moment where something happens and Harry kind of works his way around this like kind of deal, and he says, I need a year and a day. And Lee says, all right, a year and a day. And so that year and a day is not up. He's still got several months, but now that this debt has been sold to Mab, that time doesn't matter, right? And so with Mab, she comes in and she says, basically, here's the deal. You owe me 3 favors. You know, thrice I say and done, 3 favors. You can decide what you want, or you can decide which favors you accept, and kind of how it works. But obviously, of course, it's Mab. Like, no matter what, she's gonna get what she wants in the end. Like, no matter what anybody says or thinks.
Right.
And so, and that even goes on further into the next. I think you know those favors stay in place for many books in the future. But now, of course, after that, he owes Mab these 3 favors. He does one here, and then you know, a couple of books later, he polishes another one off. Right. But yeah. So now he's in debt to Mab.
Right. Yeah. I think it's always so interesting with the Fae, and Jim does such a good job of it because they never lie, right? Like they can't lie.
They physically cannot tell a lie. Yeah.
Right.
It's just there's no way that they could, even if they wanted to.
Right. And so she's telling him like, you do have a choice on what, you know, favors you accept and what you don't. But what she doesn't tell him is, I can put you in a situation where your choices are either die or do the thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so, that's the power of the Fae, man. That's to me what's so alluring about them is the fact that they can manipulation's a great word, right? They can manipulate these situations in such a way where Mab is like 75 moves ahead at all times. Yeah. Like in every situation, every scenario, she's so far ahead of what you think is possible, but she's there. And of course we see that play out, right? And then Harry's like, this is why Mab had me do this, to bring me here, to do this, to save that person, to do this, right? And then like you eventually figure out like, okay, that was her plan all along. She's freaking 50 steps ahead.
Yeah. And even, yeah, exactly. That's so well said. I couldn't have said it better. In future books,
Yeah.
we see the thing that's happening now,
Come into effect. Yeah.
get to the final end goal
Yeah.
of like what
Yeah.
she really wanted from him,
Yeah.
and it's freaking nuts,
It
dude.
is nuts,
I
man. It is
love
absolutely
these.
wild.
You know, the first three books, there was some things, especially in Grave Peril, there was some things that Butcher kind of foreshadowed and set in place that he acted on later on in the series.
Yeah.
But this book, Death Mass, is like one of the big books that really, really cements certain, or not Death Mass, Summer Night and Death Mass. Yeah. These books really cement some things that are going to come into play way later down the line.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, people are going to be like, holy crap, like he had that planned all the way from back in Summer Night, or all the way back in Death Mass. And so I always love that about
me
this
too.
series.
That's what's just absolutely so powerful about these books, man. It really, like, and not that other books don't do this, like plan it out, but I feel like in the Dresden Files, you make such connections with all the characters and whatnot that you can think back and you can remember these situations like in Summer Night or Death Mass or whatever. And yeah, I think this is all what you said, but it's powerful. It really is so extremely powerful. Like when you like realize this 4 books later, right? And you think back and you're like, wait, I need to reread that book. I need to reread this last part where that happens, and you figure out that this is a direct result of what happened 4 books ago. Even though in the other 3 books, like, it's a completely different story. It's all separate. Right. And then all of a sudden it comes back and shows up. It's really cool.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was gonna say, is like the rereadability for these books is like you can just go back and back and back and always find something new.
Exactly.
I mean, this is my, like, I don't know, 12th time reading the series or something. And I'm still finding things like this next point I'm about to talk about is the Gatekeeper. We meet the mysterious Gatekeeper in Summer Night, and he's got this silver eye. And we don't know what that's about in Summer Night, but we will 10 books from now.
Yeah.
And so that's always awesome. But then, you know, upon this reread, I noticed that the Gatekeeper, I think on more than one occasion, asked Harry what the date was. And when Harry tells him, the Gatekeeper is like, oh, that's right. And then he kind of gives Harry some advice on what to do next. I'm thinking that the Gatekeeper is some sort of time traveler, either like definitely a time traveler, but also like a interdimensional, like going to like the alternate realities. Because with the book Mirror Mirror coming up, it's not the next one, but it's the one after that. And Mirror Mirror is all about Harry going to all the alternate dimensions and seeing all the alternate Harrys.
Yeah.
And I think that we are going to get so much revealed in Mirror Mirror that he's set up previously in the series. I think even this early in the series, there is all of this alternate dimension hopping going on. And excuse me. And I think that the Gatekeeper, well, first let me say, he appears to be on Harry's side.
Yeah.
But also has no qualms about killing Harry if Harry goes bad. He tells Harry that he would have killed him if he had not gone on to fight the fairy, even though the trial with the White Council was finished. So, like when Harry is stuck in that tree and the Gatekeeper helps him get down.
Yeah.
Remember, the Gatekeeper tells him, like, your thing with the White Council is done. Like, you can go home now. And Harry's like, no, I'm going to go on and fight this war in the Fae because I need to save Lily. I need to save this girl that I've never met. And he's like, well, that's good, because if you would have said no to that, I would have just killed you now. And I think that that is because he is looking for the Harry that ends up saving the world at the end of the series.
Wow.
I think that he is hopping through all these alternate dimensions and alternate timelines and weeding out the bad Harrys or the inconsequential Harrys or the incompetent Harrys to get down to one Harry that is known to be the savior of the world.
Yeah. Wow. That's, man, I wish, and it's not that I didn't pay attention, but like I've always thought like the Gatekeeper and the Outsiders, the two most mysterious players in this entire series. At least then personally, that's what I thought. And I have not, and I now, hearing what you just said, I know that I need to go back and pay a lot more attention to the Gatekeeper. Because some of that stuff you said, like I've not, I mean, I've heard it, right? But I haven't made the connection or thought about it that far. And because that's a very, very interesting like theory or topic or whatever you want to call it. And that gets me excited is what that gets me. I'm excited to see how that works out.
I know, I'm so excited to see where the Gatekeeper goes.
Yep.
And I would really recommend, man, when you have a few extra minutes, hop on the Dresden Files Reddit. And just read the theories, because there's really, really good theories out there. There's theories about how Cal and Kumori are that we see in a later book.
Yep.
And there's all sorts of theories that people have like really nailed down and provide evidence for.
Okay, sweet.
And yeah, there's plenty of theories about the Gatekeeper. A lot of people think that he's Harry from the future coming back to help the past Harry.
I've heard that. I think you've told me that theory before. I think I've heard that one. That's cool. I will do that. I'm gonna do that right after we're done.
For sure. Yeah. I would. It's a lot of fun. However, for you, the listener, if you have not read the entire series, I really do not recommend going to the Reddit because as well-intentioned as some people may be or whatever, there is a lot of spoilers there. And most of them are marked for spoilers, but a lot of them aren't. Like, it's really, really easy to get spoiled over there.
No, and this series, you do not want to get it spoiled, man. You just don't. That hurts my heart thinking about it. Like, you just do not want to get it spoiled, dude. You just have to read it and experience it in its full light. You just have to.
Yeah. For sure. All right, so let's get past the Gatekeeper. Let's talk about Elaine. What did you think about our first introduction to the illustrious Elaine?
Well, so I enjoyed the moment very much.
Yeah.
And again, I think I like seeing Harry in these moments where he's just like utterly shocked, speechless, right? This dude that can throw out the gnarliest quips to the biggest demon and tell him he's a freaking whatever, all the time. And then he sees Elaine and he's just like crying speechless, right? He's just done. And so and so that's really cool. And of course, like the story of Elaine, right? It was first love, first everything, first intimate relationship, and they grew up together and they had each other's backs and whatnot. And he thought he killed her. He has thought this entire time that she was dead, that he burned her alive in a house. Right? Like, that's crazy. And so thinking about, I'm trying to like relate this to myself. Like, imagine if that was me and I like met that person again. Like, I would be shook to the core. And so with that said, it was super cool. And I like the way that she kind of came in, she's still this kind of like, cocky, sexy figure, right? That's very very I don't want to say prideful because she doesn't come off as prideful, but I think cocky is a good word, right?
Like she independent.
Independent, independent, strong woman for sure, absolutely, and that's good. And then of course, like learning about, and then of course you have the thing where, she's like, I was, or I don't remember how this goes, but basically Harry's like, let me guess. So the summer court told you you're going to meet the winter emissary at this time, at this hour, and then so of course they figure out that she's the summer emissary, he's the winter emissary, and watching that all connect is really cool. And I like Elaine's character. I think that, I kind of want to say, like, I wish that there was a little bit more of the talk about like the past, I guess.
Yeah.
Like more than they did, because they did some, and that was good, and that was enough to like kind of like quench my thirst about that. But I think that I think they could have got a little bit deeper, but even that said, it was really good.
I'm surprised that he didn't, and I mean, Harry isn't really this kind of character, so I guess I get it. But I'm surprised that as soon as he realized that she is the real Elaine, that he didn't just like grab her and kiss her.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No,
like,
for sure, absolutely.
I can't believe there wasn't some sort of like crazy embrace and tears and all this stuff. And Harry is like, he's not like the most like romantic person really or anything.
Yeah.
But I just think if I were in that situation and like the person, like if we both like loved each other as much as they did and then we were separated for a long time, like there's no way that we wouldn't like embrace
for sure.
to some extent.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree.
But yeah, I thought it was funny. I thought it was funny how like she's like way ahead of Harry on how suspicious she is of the council.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point. That's a good
point. And Harry is too, but we see that more so in later books.
Yeah.
We see more of his like suspicion grow and like him like not trusting the council.
Yep.
And now he's like trying to get her to like meet the council and to show herself to them.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, he's like, I'm on the outside. Like, I'm not going to get in the middle of that at all.
Well, and then even then, like a good example of that is like when Morgan shows up at Harry's door, right? Like,
yes.
Like that if I was Elaine, like it'd be like confirmed. Fuck the council. I'm not doing it. You know what I mean? Like
100%.
Yeah.
The only other note I really had about her was that she is just really sketchy in general. Like she's very mysterious. We don't really know where she goes after summer night. We don't really know how she got into the Fae court, except for her just like running away and ending up there.
Yeah.
And so, I think that she is pretty much an unknown. And I just have this gut feeling that in the future books, as we get closer to the end of the series, she is going to betray Harry in a big way, or we're going to find out that she's like a pretty serious bad guy.
Okay.
And I think that if that is the case, then I think there will be redemption for her, because I don't think Butcher would have her be a bad guy and have her not be redeemed.
Give her the chance. Yeah, for sure.
But and this, for the listeners, for the people listening, this isn't out of anything that I've read. Like this isn't anything that I've seen happen in the books so far. I'm just saying for like the future books that haven't been released yet, I kind of feel like she's going to betray Harry in a big way. All right. I don't really want to talk about him, but we meet Fix and Lily, unless you want to talk about them.
They'll come into play more in the next couple. Yeah.
They become the Summer Knight and Summer Lady, as you guys know if you read the book.
Yep.
And then Aurora is the Summer Lady who ends up being the person who like turned Lily into stone.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. She's kind of crazy.
She's crazy. And the only thing I really want to say about her is just because it'll be important for future books, and I don't know if I'll remember it by the time we get all the way over there, is that as Harry kills Aurora, she says, she keeps saying over and over, like, I just wanted the pain to stop. I just wanted the pain to stop. And again, I'm not going to say why because we can't spoil it, but Jim Butcher has this planned out so well from the beginning. And there is a reason why she is saying these things. And we find out in a later book what exactly Aurora's deal was here.
Okay, yeah.
So she's saying like, oh, I just wanted the pain to stop. I just want the pain to stop. And Harry has this great line. It's not like he doesn't say it in like a snarky way. He says it in like almost a like a solemn, like saying something to somebody who's about to die.
Yeah.
And he says, "The only people that don't hurt are dead." And then she says, "I'm so confused. I'm so confused." And then Harry just says, "I am too." And then she dies. And it's this amazing scene because, I mean, obviously this is our reread. Like, we know what happens later, and we know what the reason for all this is. And so seeing Harry, like, this is the beginning of his journey that, you know, this all comes to a head later on.
Yeah.
And this is like the beginning of that journey. And it was so interesting for me. Like, literally, this scene is where it starts. Like, this scene, everything that happens in, I'll just say it, everything that happens in Cold Days starts in this scene here.
For sure.
And I just, when I reread this, I was like, oh shit, this is where it all began. And so I really like that.
Yep, I would agree.
All right, so now we're moving into more of like Death Masks territory, where these are all the characters that came into play in Death Masks. And we don't need to go through all of them, but I definitely want to talk about a couple of them.
Yep.
Is Marcone your favorite character?
Like in the series?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would say that he's my favorite. I would say that he is by far the most interesting character.
Right.
I would give him that 100%.
Fair, yeah.
And he would probably be the character that I am most interested in.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say he's my favorite.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll just leave it at that. But I love Marcone, and I love his entire. Go ahead, you just talk. You're gonna nail it.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I know you got this. I know you got this.
So yeah, I completely agree with you. Marcone is probably not my favorite character either, but he is exactly what you just said. He is the character I'm most interested in.
Yeah.
He has so many layers to him. He is, besides, man, maybe it might be neck and neck with him and Harry being layered characters.
Yeah.
Like, he has so many layers to him. He is brutal and ruthless, but he's not dumb. He's like clever and conniving. He's super strategic. He's got these crazy fast like reflexes. Like, we've seen him like throw knives and like break a rope and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he can keep up with the supernatural world. When we first meet him, he's already clued into the supernatural world, and he doesn't even flinch at the soul gaze with Harry.
Yep.
And then he's got this other side to him that we see in Death Masks, where, you know, we don't know who it is, but like Harry, at the end of the book, Harry follows him to this hospital way out in like Idaho or something.
And before you continue, when we say Harry follows him, like, this was like a chore. It was so difficult for Harry to pull this off, but he did. Okay.
Yes. And so Harry follows him for miles and miles, and I think 2 days.
Yep.
And they end up at this hospital, this like underground kind of out in the middle of nowhere hospital that Marcone has this little girl at, and she is in a coma. She's in vegetative state. And he puts a teddy bear, or so he goes into the room where this girl is in a vegetative state, and he sits down. He puts a teddy bear in her arm. He reads to her for over an hour, puts the Shroud of Turin around her. He wraps her in the Shroud of Turin, and then he prays.
Yeah.
And just this moment, like the absolute depth of his character, that he can be all these other like really bad things, and like he goes all over the board. It's just not like it's not just good and evil. It's like all over the place. His character has so many facets. And I'm just like, dude, that scene was so good. And Harry has this moment with Marcone when Marcone walks out of the hospital and Harry is waiting at his car, and you see Harry is saying that Marcone is flickering through all these different emotions.
Like, should I kill him? Should I do this? Like all these thoughts, like yeah.
And like he's going through, like he can see all these different emotions in his eyes, but Marcone is always going to settle on the calm and collected approach.
Business approach.
Yes.
For sure.
And so him and Harry have this man, it was super like emotionally weird for me, because it was somewhere on the brink of violence just being a step away. Like violence is so close.
One wrong look, one wrong word, absolutely.
But it's also like right on the edge of being a really emotional scene.
Yeah.
Like you can tell in this scene, even with violence ready at hand, you can see how much Marcone cares about this girl.
Yeah. And how much Harry respects him for it.
And how much Harry respects him for it. And the little piece of Harry's heart that opens up to this girl as well.
Yeah.
And I mean, this is the Shroud of Turin. Like there is no way.
Big deal.
Like if Harry hadn't seen Marcone in the room with the girl, there's no way.
He would have got it right then. Fight me right now. We're doing this right here.
Yeah. There's no way he would have just let somebody take off with the Shroud of Turin. And so when Harry sees this part of Marcone, and this is like probably one of my favorite scenes in the entire book.
Yeah.
When he sees Marcone in this way, and he has this moment with Marcone, something breaks a little bit inside him. And he decides that even though he doesn't like Marcone, he doesn't like the criminal empire that he has amassed.
Yep.
He realizes that he cannot hate Marcone anymore.
Yeah.
And oh my
dude.
God, absolutely. Dude, that's such a good scene.
And let me add to that scene a little bit. So
yes.
So towards, exactly what you're talking about during that dialogue and whatnot, there's basically Harry's like, he's asking for the shroud back, right? He's like, I need the shroud. And Marcone's like, no, what I fight. And then again, like after Harry kind of, that little dam broke inside of him, he's like, all right, listen, 3 days. I'll give you 3 days. Keep the shroud here. Do what you have to do. 3 is a lucky number. It's the days that Christ was in his tomb, this, that, and the other. And of course, Marcone, like, being like what he is, like Marcone thought about it, and it was like, and he was like, you know what? All right, I'm gonna go with it. Okay. And just that, like him like deferring to Harry, right, and like allowing him to take it back, and Harry giving him the couple days of peace with this girl and praying that this will work. It was really, really cool. Really cool.
That is incredibly well said. Yes, I think, like you said, the way he defers to Harry, that's such a good way to put it, because Marcone is the kind of person where he is, as much as it may seem this way, Marcone is not a prideful person.
No, he's calculating. He's extremely calculating in every way.
He's calculating and brutal, but he is not prideful.
Yeah.
And he understands when he does not know something. And so when Harry makes the point that, Christ was wrapped in this shroud for 3 days.
3 days he rose.
And if anything was going to happen, if anything magical was going to happen, and three is a magical number too. So if anything was going to happen, then it would happen in 3 days. And then after that, he would, Marcone is supposed to send the
Deliver
shroud
it
to
to
the
him, yeah, the
church.
unmarked box and whatnot.
Yes. And Marcone, just the respect that is being displayed
It's
by both
massive,
parties in this
massive.
scene is so
Yeah,
good. And I love it. I love it in really any book where a lot of when you can see there is a respect between two people. I don't know why I like that so much,
no,
but
I do too.
in
Absolutely.
in books it really comes off strong. And like in King's Dark Tidings, when you see Rezkin and his friends show mutual respect towards each
Yeah.
other, those are always the scenes that really get me.
Yep.
And so this scene really grabbed me because he's deferring to Harry and he respects his judgment. He respects that if Harry wanted to, he could take the shroud, but
Yeah.
Harry is willing to allow him
This
to
time.
have this time.
Yep.
And not only that, but also that Marcone says, so what if I don't return it? Are you going to come after the girl? Are you going to tell people about the
Yeah.
girl?
Yeah.
And Harry says, I would never do that.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't.
I'd
Yeah.
settle it with you.
Dude, and that's it personified. That is the
Oh,
ultimate, like, yeah, ultimate call of respect right there. Like, really.
I literally have like chills all over
Yeah,
my
I
body right
know,
now.
dude. I know.
I
It's
I
incredible.
think it's such an important scene, and it's such a display of the kind of relationship that these two men will have from here on out. And they'll be hostile towards each other, and they'll say things like they'll get in each other's faces and say stuff, but there will always be this mutual respect.
Yep.
And that is something that I love so much about this relationship and so much about the character of Marcone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, me too.
I love this character so much. I think he's
Yep.
so deep and so layered.
I totally agree.
A couple things that I just want to run through real quick in my Marcone notes is that Marcone jumps off the train before all that scene. Marcone jumps off the train with the shroud, and then Michael and Harry fall. Instead of letting them drown in the water, Marcone pulls them up using the shroud.
Yeah.
It shows that Marcone might just have a good heart under all that brutality, and that he could have let them drown. Like he could have just taken off with the shroud, but something in him, in the same way that something in Harry, something in Marcone wanted to save them and knew it was the right thing to do. Yep. Even taking the risk that they could have gotten out of the water and taken the shroud from him right then and there. He pulled them out of the water, and then he called Murphy to come get them.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, dude, this is the dude. You know what I mean? Like, he's the dude. And the funny thing is, he's the enemy. He's an enemy to Harry. And I don't know if he would be my enemy. Like I like him too much, dude. I like him too much.
For sure.
And then I have a couple good Marcone quotes. There's one that will only be an inside joke for you and me and other people that have read the series. But at some point in the book, it says, I think Harry is talking to himself, and he says, Marcone isn't going to sprout horns and claws and start tearing you apart.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yes, sir.
Yeah. And then the other one is when Michael is fighting Nicodemus, and he's like, stay back, like, do not get involved, like, just let me fight him. Like, if you get involved, it's gonna go bad. And Marcone and Harry are right next to each other, and Marcone's got the gun, and or they both have guns, and Marcone's like, you know what I think? And Harry says that we should shoot Nicodemus in the back at the first opportunity and let Michael dismember him.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yep.
and Marcone just says yes.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it says,
Yeah.
then it says, I drew my gun. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like,
Oh yeah.
that is
And
the
that just goes
perfect.
to show like and that's like yeah, no, that's good. That's like and I think with that respect that they have, that's why they can work like as such. They can be such a good team when they work together. Such a good
Yes.
team. At least when their goals align, right?
Right.
And we should say
Right.
that because they're not really a team, but when they're both on the same page, like they work really well together.
Yes, exactly. All right. So we are on a roll here. Let's talk about Nicodemus and the Nickelheads. We talked about the Dinarians earlier, also known as the Nickelheads. It's what
Yep.
Harry calls them. This is by far my favorite villain in the Dresden Files. For all the reasons I said earlier, he's just, you can maybe outwit him, but you can never defeat him.
Yeah.
And Harry kind of finds a way to defeat him a little bit in this book with the noose.
Or he
But
basically finds his only
only
weakness.
weakness,
Yeah.
yes. And that comes into play in a later book
Yep.
too. But whenever Nicodemus is around, you always know that the stakes are going to be super, super high.
Yep.
That Nicodemus is not going to stop at killing you or neutralizing you. He is going to murder your entire family and anybody who knows you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
For sure.
that's, man, that's what I like about Nicodemus is whenever Harry tangles with him, it's like everything is on the line.
Yeah.
It's not just you, like it's not just him.
Yep.
And yeah, I really like that about his character. I like that his motives, really Nicodemus is, no pun intended, a shadowy character.
Yeah.
And his motives are both clear and muddy. And what I mean by that is it seems like he just wants to bring about an apocalypse, which seems very simple and straightforward, but he also proves to be very, very intelligent. He's been alive for, like we said, 2,500 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's proved to be very cunning, very clever. He's always one step ahead of Dresden. He's always one step ahead of everyone.
Yeah.
And there's enough about him, especially that we'll see in later books. There's enough about him that shows that he does have a larger plan, and that this whole like I just want to bring about an apocalypse or I just want destruction
Yep.
might kind of be a smokescreen. Like it might be kind of like, I'm sure he does want to do that because he's had a fallen angel in his head for however long. But I kind of feel like he's got more mechanisms going on than just bringing about the apocalypse.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
Yeah, I think he's got kind of a deeper motive and something that is going to resonate with him more as a person as the newer books come out. And yeah, we learn that his tie can be used against him to choke and kill him.
And his tie is the noose that the knights believe was used. It was Judas. It was basically what he hung himself with. Right. Very powerful artifact.
Right. So yeah, I guess there's not much more to say about Nicodemus. Just that. Another thing I really like about him is he's got his Dinarian can cover him in shadow.
Yeah.
And it can like spread wings. Like when he's on the train, he like flies in. And man, that's a really cool part about Nicodemus. I can't spoil it. his demon can also do things that we find out in later books, and it's really, really, really cool.
Yep.
Yeah, what are your like general thoughts on Nicodemus? Is he your favorite villain or your second favorite villain, or who would be your favorite villain?
No, I would definitely think that Nicodemus would be my favorite villain for sure. In the sense of pure villainy, right? Because like sometimes I think of Mab as a villain, or I think of there's some other players that come in. But again, and I all I can do is really agree with what you said because I think you nailed it. But he's very much always so far ahead, and the feeling that you get, the way that Jim wrote it, right? The feeling that you get is he always has this agenda, right, that is hidden to the reader, to all the characters. Even at the end, when you find out what the agenda is, you're like, there's more. There's more than that. Like he's definitely thinking about more. He's got more going on in his head and more playing around. So I think in terms of cunning, thought process, things like that, I would say that he is my number one favorite villain in the book.
Yes. All right, let's move it right along then. We meet Butters for the first time in this book. He is a medical examiner who listens to polka music. And the funny thing about him is I think we see it in this book. Or did we meet him in Summer Night? We might have met him in Summer Night. I don't think it was
no, it was Summer Night because I think it was Summer Night because he basically was like Murphy brought Harry there and he was the guy that was examining Rule, and so Murphy's like,
yes,
yes.
And so the funny thing about Butters, there's lots of funny things about Butters, but one of the interesting things about Butters is he works on corpses. He's a medical examiner for like when people die and like trying to figure out how they die.
Yep.
But Harry and Murphy and the whole gang use him as their like surgeon and doctor. And
gunshot wounds, can't go to the hospital, call Butters.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that is like super funny. Like there was I forget what series it was, but there was another series that I either read or maybe it was a TV show where they had a veterinarian that would patch them up. And I'm like, that's so funny. Just like taking something that's like, they're obviously not qualified for this, but they're the closest thing you got.
Yep.
And so that's kind of like what Butters is. Like, he's the closest thing to someone that can patch you up.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say, as we go throughout the series, he continues to be the person that patches everybody up. And he is forced to, I can't remember if he like takes classes or just like reads a lot of books or something, but he's forced to learn more about actual medical practice
on like live people,
on live people in order to help his friends.
Yep.
So that's something that I really love about him. Do you have anything to say about Butters?
Other than, again, stuff you said, this is the first time we meet Butters, right? And Butters turns out to be a huge role, right, in the later books, and so that's really cool. I like, especially after this is what is Summer Night? Is it sixth book?
What Summer Night is the
fourth book. Okay, so like even 4 books in, right, we meet this character, and you kind of like see his origin, right, and some of the notes here in the prior in Death Mass, right? Harry burned down Bianca's mansion, killed all these vampires and probably some people too, unfortunately, and whatnot, and burned. And so Butters, being the guy that he is, was tasked with examining this scene, right? He was supposed to examine all the people and bodies, and so he's examining these vampires, right? And in this report, he says, they look like humans, but they're not. This is not a human, right? And whatnot.
Yeah.
And so of course he gets reprimanded. He gets on probation. He has to go to counseling. He has to do all these things. And so it's, showing he's honest to a fault. And also open-minded for the other side of kind of the, the spooky side of things, right? As Harry likes to call it, the spooky side. And so that's cool. And
Right.
I think he's got a great character progression, like later on. I really do. It might be one of my favorite character progressions out of this entire book.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, let's go into I think you wrapped that up really well. Let's talk about the archive and Kincaid.
Okay, the archive and Kincaid coming up. So the archive, another one of my favorite I want to say being, but it's not really, so the archive is basically this. It is a person who has the entire like world's memory of every other living archive. She's an archive. That's why they call it the archive. She's got all the knowledge that human has ever had, all the writings, all the teachings, everything, into one mind. I'm pretty sure it's passed down the mother's line. So like her mom was the archive, and then of course she gives birth to the archive, who is Harry names Ivy, which I love.
And and the archive remembers everything that the past
archives all the way
remember.
Up as far as it goes, which is crazy to think about. And so Harry meets I think so, he's having the duel. He has to have the duel with
Ortega.
Ortega, yeah, Duke Ortega. And so they say that she's like a mediator, right? Okay, so she's a mediator.
She's the mediator.
And so he says, she's gonna come meet you, talk about some things, whatnot. And Harry opens the door, and here comes Kincaid, which is the archives like handler, I guess, or caretaker, somebody that's tasked with driving her around, protecting her, feeding her, getting her to bed on time, like basically being this father figure for this extremely powerful being. Again, I want to say being, but I feel bad saying that, right? Because he's a person, like, what I mean?
And
she's
Kincaid is like this hired gun too. He's like the best supernatural mercenary kind of person.
And he's incredibly, I've always, he's like supernatural in his skill. He's very, very powerful and a perfect shot with snipers and all that stuff. Very, very deadly mercenary, I guess you could say. And so Harry opens the door, and here's this 7-year-old girl, right? And Harry's like, well, she's cute. What's going on here? Like, here's this little girl. And she walks in, and like, he starts talking to her, and he's like, wait. And then, of course, she explains what the archive is to him, right?
Yeah.
And I'm the collective knowledge, this, that. And so, of course, later on, we see a little bit more of her as well, and kind of her progression, which is really cool. But I just want to say that out of like some of the mysterious figures, right? I talked about the Gatekeeper, the Outsiders. She's not as mysterious because we get a lot more knowledge about her. Right. But I do want to say that, like, just thinking about that, right? Thinking about the sum of all human knowledge into one girl's head is wild. It's wild to me. It's absolutely crazy.
Can you imagine how taxing that is?
Oh yeah, and Harry, I think Harry even mentions that at some point. It might be in a later book, but he feels for her, right? Like he feels like this girl is like got so much on her shoulders. Of course, she carries herself really well. She's this very well-spoken little girl, and of course, very knowledgeable. Of course, she's got all the knowledge ever.
And I think he even mentions that normally when the power is passed down from mother to daughter, the daughter is usually older. She's usually like in her 20s or 30s.
When she comes into her powers, right? Yeah.
Right. And so, I think we find out in a later book why it didn't happen that way, but it's very unusual for someone this young to become the archive.
Oh, okay. Okay. See, I never caught that. That makes sense. I got you. That makes sense. But yeah, other than that, I don't know if there's, we don't find out a whole lot about her. Well, a whole lot more about her in this book.
I did like the scene where, at first she's like sort of cold to Harry because up until now she's just been called the archive.
She's been like this, not really a tool, but like this thing that's separated, right? It's different.
She hasn't been humanized.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, she comes over and Harry lets her pet his cat. And that was kind of a cool scene too, because he's like, this girl is like spooky. She's like a computer.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden she like breaks away from that and goes, oh, kitty. And like goes down and like pets his cat. And so it kind of makes Harry realize that there is a human there. Like it's not just like this
there's
spooky
the little girl's there, it's that's right. Essentially that's what she is, but she's got this this wisdom and power laid on top of her that, you know, she didn't choose. It wasn't her choosing, right? It was something that was forced upon her, and she has to live with that every day.
Right. And so it kind of creates this relationship with her and Harry, because then he gives her a name. He's like, you need a name. And so he names her, and she holds on to that like a precious gift.
Yeah, forever.
And and because no one else has ever treated her that way.
Yep.
And so I love how her and Harry's relationship kind of grows and becomes more. And I don't want to give too much away, but it's,
no, for sure.
It gets really, really good.
Yep.
All right, let's move on to this next character in, let's see, is it Summer Night? Does she come into play in Summer Night?
Yeah.
Or is it Death Mask? Because he has the, he has the manacles from what's her name on the ship when the Dinarian.
Oh yeah, when they meet in the treehouse.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
okay. Yeah.
So in Death Masks, we meet the future love of my life, Molly Carpenter, as she is sneaking into the Carpenter's treehouse to change out of her emo skank clothes that she wore to school before her mom sees. So obviously she's part of the Carpenter family. They're like this very like Catholic family. Her mom is very uptight, but Molly is like the rebel in the family. And so she goes to school in like this tattered, like schoolgirl kind of outfit with like her pink and blue hair. And, you know, she's got all like this makeup on, and, you know, and she like shows up to this treehouse while Harry is trying to hide out there because he heard a sound. Or why was he up there? I forget. He was hiding from something.
Yeah.
And
well, no, he did hear a sound. That's Yeah,
and so she you know, she comes up the ladder and they have just this awesome interaction. I don't know. She's like after seeing Harry's handcuffs from earlier on the boat, she says, "Neat, are you on the lam? Is that why you're in a treehouse hiding?" And he says, No, it's a long story. And she's like, those are fun time handcuffs, not bad time handcuffs.
Yeah.
And he goes, no, and how would you know about fun time handcuffs anyways? And she says, the internet, expanding the frontier of adolescent minds. And I just love, this is such a good like shadow of their banter that is going to be in future books, because she becomes like such a major, like important character, especially where it is involved with Harry. And so the relationship that they have is exactly like this throughout the whole rest of the series. There's this awesome banter, and I love it so much. And so then he's talking about, in that same scene, he's talking about how him and Susan can't be together, and Molly is clued into the supernatural world. And so he's like, we like basically tells her that they can't have sex because, you know, Susan would want to drink his blood. And she says, well, why don't you tie her up then? And it was just like this like crazy thing for Harry to hear from somebody in like early high school. I think she's like 15. And he's like, how the hell do you know about any of this? And then she proceeds to she's like, do you want your handcuffs off? And she brings out a lockpick set and starts like picking the lock and getting Harry out of his handcuffs. And I love this scene so much. I love just like how we meet Molly, and she just becomes like probably my favorite character and like my dream girl. So Molly's fantastic. We get a parting shot of Molly and Sonia, and she has at the very end of the book, and she's convinced Sonya to call all these grocery stores to ask if they have Prince Albert in a can.
Yeah.
And Sonya is super confused because he's like from Russia and he doesn't understand that this is a joke. And so they're just going through like this phone book, and she's like crossing off numbers as they go down. And he's getting super confused because they hang up on him every time. And Harry is there. He just came in the door, and she just like looks over at him and winks at him. And he like has to like cover his mouth and turn around and walk out the door because he's about to burst out laughing.
Yeah.
And I just think that is a really good shadow of the fun that is about to come from their relationship. Like it's just going to be like that pretty much the whole way. And they're just going to have a ton of fun. It's going to be super witty. And I just love it. I love it so much.
Yep, I do too.
Do you have anything to say about Molly from this book?
No, I think we nailed it on that one.
Why don't you tell me about Shiro?
Shiro, okay. So Shiro is a part of the elite group, otherwise known as the Knights of the Cross. So you have Michael, Harry's best friend, Sonya, who we were just speaking about, and then Shiro, who is the third Knight of the Cross. What is the name of his sword that he holds?
Fiddleacius. Or Shiro?
Shiro, yeah.
Yeah, Fiddleacius.
Okay, Fiddleacius. All right, awesome. And so he is a Knight of the Cross, and this is kind of blending together in my head a little bit. May need some help with this, Spencer, but the scene, I'm having a hard time remembering when the scene starts. So basically, Harry's. Can you start me off there? So just the start of the scene, like before he meets Shiro, like.
Where we meet Shiro?
No, yeah, just kind of the situation, because I remember like he meets Shiro in the alley. I know that, but like, what does he do before that? Like, what's he running from? What does he hear? Like something. I'm having a hard time remembering that.
I think Harry just sees the Dinarian, and he's
okay.
Like,
it just shows up. Yeah. And so Harry walks past this Shiro, who's in like shroud or whatever, and he's on the ground.
He looks like a homeless person.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a vagrant. He calls him a vagrant. These darn vagrants, or whatever else he says.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like he hears a roar or something weird, and he turns around. And there's just a Dinarian behind him, and I think Shiro. There might be some little bit of dialogue. Shiro gets up, and it's like
asks him to hold his glasses.
Yeah, hold my glasses, exactly. And then all of a sudden, like Shiro starts battling this Dinarian, right?
Yeah.
And so after Shiro, I think decapitates him, right? Cuts the Dinarian's head off or something like that, or basically kills him, gets his coin, or Michael shows up, or either Michael or Sonya.
Sonya and Michael
show up. Okay, yep. And so Michael picks up his coin and whatnot, and then that starts, that's like the basis of this book, right? Like what kind of their viewpoint and what they've heard that's like causing them to like want Harry to stay out of this, and whatnot. There's a prophecy that comes into play that they've only heard half of, and so throughout this book, right, there's several. I really like Shiro, and I think the reason why is probably the scene where basically Harry gets abducted by Nicodemus. And this happens a little bit later on, and this goes back to the curse that you were talking about, the Barabbas curse, right? And so so Nicodemus can choose one person. He chooses Harry ultimately, is what, like Harry's the one that's chose to die, and so Shiro. Being what he is, godly man, this, that, and the other, Knight of the Cross, basically shows up and like takes Harry's place. Says, you can take me, you can take my life, but you have to give him his, right? And so that right there, I mean, that's super powerful. That's like a Knight of the Cross thing, right? Very honorable, very honest, humbled way of like doing things, and
And then he gives Harry Fiddleacius. He's like, take this.
Yep. And that comes into play later. And of course, so with that Barabbas, so is the plague part of the Barabbas curse, or is that separate?
No, the plague is separate. That's just how they chose to kill him.
Okay, I got you. Yeah, and so Nicodemus and his apocalyptic mindset, it's like, I'm gonna set off this plague, and I want to kill as many people as I can, yada yada yada. And so to start that though, they needed a like a sacrifice, right? And so Shiro took Harry's place in becoming that sacrifice for Harry, so Harry could live. And of course they go to the airport, which is where this is going down. Shiro's there, dying, sick, really sick. And they have this really sweet dialogue. And again, man, it's so hard to like separate these two for me right now. Like I'm thinking about Summer Night and this one.
Scroll down to the Death Mask's notes.
Okay.
And you'll see where it starts with Shiro is dying. Yeah.
Gives his parting words to the knights and Harry. He tells the newly recruited Sonya that he's very proud of him. He tells Harry that he has to stop Nicodemus. And then Nick was, oh yeah, and then this is another cool part. And he says to Harry, he's like, Nick is afraid of you. Nicodemus is scared of you. He had seen something that could hurt him, which is the noose. And of course, Harry, he does that. He tries to kill him with that.
Yeah.
He tells Michael that he's now the leader of the knights. Because for some reason, I didn't make that connection that Shiro was the leader before this.
Oh yeah.
Like, I knew that he was like, because he taught Michael, right? Like he taught, he took Michael in and taught him everything there is to know about it.
Right.
And whatnot. And then train and dies like a man. Like a man finally laying down a heavy burden. And so that's super sad. And then they have the train scene where they fight Nicodemus and they're trying to get the shroud. That's when Marcone shows up, right? Kind of saves the day. He's the MVP of the show and whatnot. And Michael and Sonya's there. They're all fighting. And then after that fight's over, right? Michael and Harry make it back. Harry gets this letter that was dated like 2.5 weeks ago. And Harry looks at it and he's like, this has my name 2 weeks ago, but it's your address. And Michael's like, here, just take it. And he opens it up and it's a letter from Shiro that he had written 2 weeks ago. And I think, Spencer, you have this clip ready for us, right? Okay, let's hear it.
I what? Michael offered me an envelope and the cane as a unit. I took them both and frowned at the envelope. The lettering was in black calligraphy and flowed beautifully across the envelope. To Harry, Dresden, and it's your address, Michael, postmarked 2 weeks ago. Michael shrugged. I opened the envelope and found 2 pages inside. One was a copy of a medical report. The other was ornately handwritten like the envelope. It read, Dear Mr. Dresden, by the time you read this letter, I will be dead. I have not been given the details, but I know a few things that will happen over the next few days. I write you now to say what I might not have the chance to in the flesh. Your path is often a dark one. You do not always have the luxury that we do as Knights of the Cross. We struggle against powers of darkness. We live in black and white, while you must face a world of grays. It is never easy to know the path in such a place. Trust your heart. You are a decent man. God lives in such hearts. Enclosed is a medical report. My family is aware of it, though I have not shared it with Michael or Sonya. It is my hope that it will give you a measure of comfort in the face of my choice. Do not waste tears on me. I love my work. We all must die. There is no better way to do so than in the pursuit of something you love. Walk in mercy and truth. Shiro. I read over the medical report, blinking at several tears. What is it? Sonya asked. It's from Shiro, I said. He was dying. Michael frowned at me. I held up the medical report. Cancer. Terminal. He knew it when he came here. Michael took it and let out a long breath. Now I understand. I don't. Michael passed the report to Sonya and smiled. Shiro must have known that we would need you to stop the Dinarians. It's why he traded himself for your freedom, and why he accepted the curse in your place. Why? Michael shrugged. You were the one we needed. You had all of the information. You were the one who realized Cassius was masquerading as Father Vincent. You had contacts within the local authorities to give you access to more information, to help us when we needed the concourse emptied. You were the one who could call in Marcone for his help. I'm not sure that says anything good about me,
Yeah, I think, man, that is such a, like, I'm like legitimately tearing up from
Yeah,
that.
me too. Me too.
Oh my God. I think, the best part of that letter is, especially for you and I, like we know how hard Harry's road gets.
Yeah.
And Shiro telling him this early in the series, like, your road is a dark one. Like, you
Yeah.
don't walk a road of black and white like
yeah.
we do. You're gonna have to make decisions that are not gonna be easy ones, and decisions that will hurt you and hurt other people. But it'll be for the greater good, because I know that you're a good man and that God lives in your heart.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. That's all I can do is like shake my head with how, and this is just a testament to the writing ability of these, especially Jim Butcher. Like, it's just really is. There's such a good moral message that goes along with stuff like that. Like, such a deep seated, founded moral message that really just, and that's why, like, it'll bring me to tears, right? Because it's not, you're not just reading like this book, right? Like, it's very, very powerful and very, um, it's got an influence that goes with it, and it kind of carries itself throughout, and it's just so good, man. It's all of it's so good. The crying, the laughing, that's the kind of book, it's kind of series that this is. It's just very, very strong in every sense, which is just so awesome.
Yeah. So the last thing that I wanted to say about Shiro, really, or actually two things, is one scene that I really liked of his was where Harry is looking for Michael, for somebody to help him with the duel.
Yeah.
And the only people that are home are Shiro and Charity. And this also says a lot to Charity's character, but Shiro, Harry's like, I need to find him for this duel, and like, I need him to be my second.
Yeah.
And Shiro turns to Charity and he's like, would Michael help him? And Charity is honest, and she says that Michael would, even though she doesn't like Harry.
Yeah.
She's honest about how Michael really would help Harry. And so
no matter
Shiro
what,
says,
without a thought.
Yeah. And so Shiro says, then I will help him too. Like, I will treat him exactly as Michael would treat him, because I trust Michael, but also he knew he was dying.
Yeah.
And he knew that he would name Michael the leader of the Knights of the Cross. And so I feel like in that moment, not only does he trust and respect Michael, and he would do what Michael would do anyways, but also he's like, Michael is about to be the leader of this group.
Yeah.
And so if the leader, like, if that's what the leader asks of me, basically, then that's what I'll do. Like, if Michael is the leader, if Michael was the leader right now, this is what he would want me to do, and I would listen.
Yeah.
And so I just thought that was such a good scene. And I just liked, when Shiro is dying, I just loved the moment where he officially tells Michael, like, you're in charge now, like, this is yours.
Yeah.
And it's just like this really powerful scene, because knowing the rest of the series, we know kind of like what Michael becomes, and like this, this leader that he becomes, and this is kind of just like where it starts.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really powerful for me.
I agree. I totally agree.
Okay, so that's Shiro. We also see Thomas, Susan, and Fort Hill in this book. Basically, if you read these books, like, there's not there's not anything I really have to say about any of these characters other than Thomas kind of has this moment with Harry where Harry says, "Why help me?" And Thomas says, "Life would be incredibly dull if we had the answers to all of our questions."
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know, it kind of makes me wonder, when this book was first released, I kind of wonder what theories were going around about Thomas. Like, I would love to know, like, what people thought of this when it was happening. Because, you know, I know what I thought while I was reading through it, but I wonder, like, what the community at large was kind of thinking Thomas was. And so,
for sure.
you know, we'll see in the next book, a lot of that gets explained. And yeah, Fort Hill, it doesn't really come up in later books really, but Fort Hill was a part of a holy crusade against darkness in his younger days. Him and his friends get tattoos on their arms, and they pledge to always fight darkness. And that's kind of how Fort Hill gets into the supernatural aspect of Chicago. I think it would be a great short story if we got Fort Hill and his friends taking down the vampire.
That would be cool.
That'd be pretty sweet.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's move into some of our favorite quotes. I'll start with these, and why don't you look through the list and see if there's any you want to talk about?
Okay.
So my absolute favorite, like, funny scene in the whole series is this part where Morgan shows up at the door.
Oh yeah.
And he's like, "What do you have going on in here, Dresden?" And Harry says, "Well, I was gonna settle in with a porno video and a bottle of baby oil, but I don't think I have enough for two." Morgan says, "You're disgusting." And then Harry says, "Yeah, I'm bad. I'm a bad man."
Yeah.
And then Morgan says, somewhere in that same scene, Morgan says, "Do you think you're funny?" And Harry says, "Oh, I'm funny. Underappreciated, but funny."
But funny. Yep. That is good. I see this one right here. That's I'm pretty sure this is Bob to Harry. And so they have a little dialogue, and Bob says to Harry, "Here's why I ask you why you don't spend your time doing safer and more boring things. Maybe administering suppositories to erratic gorillas." And then I think Harry says, "I live for a challenge," or "you don't," as the case may be.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that part. That was Harry and Bob when Harry first tells Bob about how he's interacted with Mab.
Yeah.
And Bob's like, "You need to live a more boring life, like administering suppositories to erratic gorillas."
Yeah.
That's so great. I love the scene where Harry's in front of Maeve, and she's got like the sex glamour on, and he's like super hard, and he's like trying to convince himself not to like go to bed with these fairies.
Yeah.
And so he grabs this pitcher of water, and he says, "I undid the fly, lowered the zipper on my pants, and poured freezing cold water directly down my pants."
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. That's a good one. Here's one. This is Murphy to Harry. Murphy says, "I'm gonna be sick, Harry." Or, "I'm gonna be sick." Harry says, "You'll get through it." "What if I don't?" And Harry says, "Then I'll make fun of you every day for the rest of your life. I will call you a sissy girl in front of everyone you know, tie frilly aprons on your car, and lurk in the parking lot at the CPD and tell you to shake it, baby, every single day."
I love that
so great.
so much.
Yeah, that's super good.
And then in that same exact scene, she like pulls a gun out, but it's like a small one because it's what she had to. It's the only one that would fit on her ankle. And Harry goes, "Murphy's got a girl gun. Murphy's got a girl gun." And then I love, this is a more serious quote, but it's when Harry is talking to Aurora at the top of that building, and she's talking about all this pain, all this pain that Harry is experiencing and doesn't realize it, all this emotional pain. And Harry basically tells her, like, It's not a big deal. Like, I'll get through it. And this quote just like really struck me. She says, monsters are born of pain and grief and loss and anger, and your heart is full of them.
Mm.
And
Yep.
it's kind of, it's kind of a bit of foreshadowing, just because Harry always has, and I think we'll even talk about it in one of the things below, but Harry has this thing about being terrified that he is a monster.
Yeah.
Because, he has this dark past, and he knows that he has thought about his powers in a way that is not completely righteous. It is not completely morally good. And so he has this fear of becoming a monster. And so for Aurora to tell Harry this thing, it really like must have added to his growing anxiety of becoming what he fears.
Yeah.
It's also kind of interesting because, you see that quote at first and you think like, oh, wow, she's being like really honest with him. But she knows that that's something that he worries about.
Yeah.
And so she's using that to try to influence him.
Yep, for sure.
When we find out later that she's a bad guy and that she's trying to influence him, because in the same scene, she tries to get him to come over to Summer's side.
Yeah.
And so it was an interesting tactic. She knew a lot about him, and she knew that this is something that he feared, and she uses that against him. The other quote from Summer Night that I had that I really thought was funny was at the very end when he's charging into the battle, he yells, "I don't believe in fairies."
Yeah.
Well, he's like in the Fae around all this
typical
fairy
Harry
warfare.
Dresden.
Yeah,
typical Harry Dresden, right there.
So great.
Yep.
And then in Death Masks, he says he's talking with Father Vincent. Father Vincent calls him a witch, and Harry says, "I'm not a witch. I'm a wizard." And Vincent says, "What's the difference?" Harry says, "Wizard has a Z."
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
You want to read this next one?
Sure. Yeah.
It's Harry when he first wakes up.
Okay, perfect. Harry says, "I wanted to smack the clock for waking me up, but I reined in the impulse. I'm not against a little creative violence now and again, but you have to draw the line somewhere. I wouldn't sleep in the same room as someone who would hit Mickey Mouse." Oh, goodness.
So good.
Yep.
Another quote I thought was both interesting and funny is Thomas and Harry are talking about how Thomas's dad kind of signed him up for this duel and like put him in this position, and how Thomas's dad was trying to get rid of Thomas.
Yeah.
And Harry says, "What a nice father." And Thomas says, "Him and Bill Cosby." And it's funny now, like at the time he meant something different. Like at the time he meant that Bill Cosby is this very like innocent kind of person, and like comparing the two is like apples and oranges. So it's kind of like, it's funny because they're so different. But nowadays it's funny because they're both sexual predators. Like Thomas's dad is part of the white court, and he's like literally a sexual predator. And then Bill Cosby is literally a sexual predator.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Yeah, that was like a double whammy.
Yep.
And I don't remember what part of the book this was from, but I wrote down Harry saying, "That's what you get for being a hero. You get to eat a 6-pack of 9mm bonbons."
I remember that.
Thought that was funny. So let's talk about some of our favorite moments, and we can kind of pick and choose what we go through here. I'll start it out, and if you see any on this list, then you can chime in.
Okay.
Something that I thought was interesting was Martha Liberty saying the council before the council meeting, Martha Liberty, Injun Joe, and Ebenezer are all kind of standing in a circle, and they're talking about Harry, and not talking to Harry, but talking amongst themselves, and Harry can hear them. And I think it was Martha Liberty that says, you know what he was meant to be, talking about Harry. And so I'm interested to see what that means later on. Obviously, the council knows something about Harry, and they know something about like either what Justin Dumorn meant him to be, or just like if Harry is some sort of like, I don't know, hero of legend or something. Like they know something he doesn't. And I'm interested to see that play out. I kind of wish Harry had to have more of a battle within himself to either use the unraveling for Susan or Lily, because he kind of has this moment where he gets the unraveling and he's like, oh, I could use this to free Susan. And I kind of thought that that was going to be a bigger plot device when he goes into the fairy realm to fight. And so I was kind of hoping he was going to have this moment where he could either choose to save Lily or save Susan. And it would kind of be this big choice, but unfortunately we didn't get that. We also see Mab offer Harry the Winter Night Mantle for the first time after the battle. Harry says, not just no, but hell no. And she says that she will hold Lloyd Slate prisoner until Harry comes around. She says they're going to ask him again in the future, which is something, you know, obviously we'll see later in the series. And Slate asks Dresden right then and there to please kill him and take the mantle so that Mab cannot torture him. This is like obviously a pretty horrific thing. Like, you know, they're gonna take Lloyd Slate and do whatever they want to him until Harry decides to take the mantle. And you can tell in this moment that Lloyd Slate just knows he is screwed. He knows he is totally screwed. I think it's just like a very like chilling end for this book, for that scene. The other thing I want to mention real quick, and it won't take too long, but I love the end of Summer Night, where Harry starts to get his life back together and forgive himself for Susan and allows himself to have fun with his friends. You know, I've been through several times like this where I was in a funk and I didn't feel like I could socialize, and I was kind of like in my own world and also like self-destructive. And whenever you come out of that, it's always a great feeling to get social again and to start to like pick yourself back up. So I really kind of identified with Harry in this moment. And I'm just going to read a couple paragraphs here from the end of the book. This is the very end of Summer Night. Later that night, I showed up at Billy's apartment. Laughter drifted out under the door, along with music and the smell of delivered pizza. I knocked and Billy answered the door. Conversation ceased inside. I came into the apartment. A dozen wounded, bruised, cut, and happy werewolves watched me from around a long table scattered with drinks, pizza express boxes, dice, pencils, pads of paper, and little inch-tall models on a big sheet of graph paper. Billy, I said, and the rest of you guys, I just wanted to say that you really handled yourselves up there. A lot better than I expected or hoped. I should have given you more credit. Thank you. Billy nodded and said, it was worth it, right? There was a murmur of agreement from the room. I nodded. Okay, then. Someone get me a pizza and a Coke and some dice. But I want it understood that I'm going to need Fuse. Billy blinked at me. What? Fuse, I said. I want big, bulging thews, and I don't want to have to think too much. His face split. His face split into a grin. Georgia, do we have a barbarian character sheet left? Sure, Georgia said, and went to a file cabinet. I took a seat at the table and got handed pizza and Coke and listened to the voices and chatter start up again and thought to myself that it was a whole hell of a lot better than spending another night crucifying myself in the lab. You know what disappoints me? Billy asked me after a while. No, what? All those fairies and duels and mad queens and so on, and no one quoted old Billy Shakespeare, not even once. I stared at Billy for a minute and started to laugh. My own aches and bruises and cuts and wounds pained me, but it was an honest, stretchy pain, something that was healing. I got myself some dice and some paper and some pencils and settled down with friends to pretend to be Thord the Barbarian, to eat, drink, and be merry. Lord, what fools these mortals be.
Nice.
I'm like, dude, like I fucking love these endings, dude.
Yep.
Like, it's so good, dude. Yeah, I just wanted to read that. I thought that was such a good way to wrap that book and just show Harry getting back in the swing of things, back with his friends, and just ending on a positive note after all this hell that he's been through.
Yeah.
I really, really love that. And I love all the little, always like the last sentence in every ending of the book is always really good.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, what fools these mortals be. It's such a good way to end it. All right. Did you see any from Death Masks? Did you see any moments you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, of course. So the very first opening scene, right? The Larry Fowler show.
Yes.
I think I agree with the notes here say it was cool to see how regular people think of magic and how others try and cover it up. And so that it was very interesting, right? And you have this like celebrity show host, Larry Fowler, and Harry's just sitting there being as honest as can be. He's like, so what are you? I'm a wizard.
Yeah.
I use magic, you know, stuff like that. And Larry's just like, oh, this guy's funny, you know, this, that, and the other. And so that, I like that. I like that scene, and it's definitely interesting to see the contrast. And then the other one too, there's a scene, and I think this, I can't remember when Ebenezer asked Harry about the satellite or the telescope that they used to find an asteroid or find as an asteroid later turned out to be. So he asked him about that earlier in the book, correct? When they met.
Yeah. Okay. Ebenezer calls because he finds out about the duel with Harry and Ortega. Yeah. And Ebenezer calls him and asks about the telescope and about the satellite.
And then, so of course, after that, it's at the end of the book. The duel's gone down. Ortega cheated, whatnot. You know, the whole thing messed up. And Harry's sitting at home, or no, he's at a diner, or he's at home, and everybody's like, you should just watch the news tonight. And he hangs up really fast. Right. Hangs up the phone, and so Harry's like, all right. So he goes in a diner, asks him to turn the news on, and the news coverage is like, crazy catastrophe. There has been an asteroid, which we later found out was a meteorite that came down in, you know, wherever in Mexico where his Casa de Verde was, right?
Right.
And Ebenezer had pulled an old Soviet satellite out of the sky and literally destroyed that entire castle of Red Court vampires. Ortega, all of his lackeys, all of it, right? And so that it's just a nod to how powerful Ebenezer is. He's it's just such an incredibly powerful wizard.
Yeah. And not only that, but during that scene too, it even mentions how they're showing like video footage. Yeah. And right outside the crater of where this thing hit is this little tiny town where the vampires were feeding on the humans. Yeah. So not only is Ebenezer powerful, he is able to control it so well that there was no ramifications for the humans outside the castle.
Yep.
I thought that was super, super awesome.
No, I agree.
we kind of talked about Harry becoming a monster. This demon that Harry calls up earlier in the book asks him why he does what he does, and basically the answer is because Harry is like the demon asks him why do you do all these good things, like why do you help people, like why are you trying to tip your karmic scale, and why are you doing it out in the open? And basically the short answer is that Harry is terrified of becoming a monster, and he, on some level, he believes that if he does enough good, then he won't be this monster that he is afraid of. And not only that, he practices out in the open. He tells people he's a wizard because then he has this form of accountability. Like if something goes really, really wrong that only a wizard could do, but nobody knew Harry was a wizard, he would be more tempted to do that thing. But if people know that he's a wizard and something magically messed up goes wrong, then there's a level of accountability. Like he knows people are going to come to him and be like, oh, the wizard did it. And so I feel like it's a little bit of a safeguard for him. I love the scene where Harry beats up Cassius with the bat after Cassius gives up his coin. And, Cassius is just like, oh, please forgive me. And he's just being like totally fake about it. And then, Cassius said, oh, like the knights are not going to do anything about it. They're good men. And Harry says, you're right. These are good men, righteous men, but I'm not. And just beats the ever-living fuck out of him.
Breaks his legs, breaks his arms, freaking just completely mutilates the dude.
Man, it is brutal. It's probably one of the most brutal things Harry's ever done.
I would agree.
And then he throws a quarter to him, and he's like, he breaks the phone so that Cassius can't call anybody.
He has to crawl on 2 broken legs, broken femurs, as he crawls way down to a phone booth.
And so then I think it's Michael that says, payphones cost more than a quarter nowadays. And Harry just says, I know. And then everybody starts bursting out laughing. There was something that I just wanted to bring up for you. There was, in our last episode, you mentioned how you really liked Michael's like Latin battle cries that he calls out. And so I caught one in this book where Michael is on the train and he yells, Lava Dei quota sordium. And then Harry translates, and it's cleanse what is unclean, oh God.
I remember that. I
was like,
that's powerful.
That was a cool one.
The other one that I want to look up that he does a lot is like in nomine Dei.
Remember
that one?
I think it means in God's name or something.
That's probably my favorite one that he does.
In nomine Dei.
In nomine Dei.
And then last but not least, Harry picks up the coin meant for Michael's son. And after hearing a ghostly voice whisper to him, he buries the coin in his basement inside a circle and pours concrete over it. That's not going to come back to haunt him.
Exactly.
I can't wait until we get there. I think this is such a great moment because although we can't talk about it too much on this episode, I would be very interested to see a short story of, with Mirror Mirror coming up, maybe like a short story of this alternate version of Michael's son, and he does pick up the coin. And, we kind of see what happens with that. But honestly, what an idiot Harry is. Like he couldn't have like pushed the kid out of the way or use like his sleeve or something to grab it. I'm like, God damn it, Harry.
That's Harry though.
But it leads to an excellent plot device that is like one of my favorite plot devices in the series.
For sure.
And so I cannot wait to get there. So when you kind of wrapped up these books, what was your general feeling on them? I know we already rated them, but what was just like your general opinion on these books after finishing them?
I think if I were to take the series as a whole, right, I think that Death Masks, well, both of them, Death Mask and Summer Night, would rank probably somewhat high, fairly high on the list. I think that they introduced a lot of really good characters, and unfortunately with Shiro, you know, they killed off a really good character, but even that in itself is like, was still like, you know, that's all good. That's good reading,
such a good
right?
moment.
Yeah, it's a good moment, very heartfelt. And so, man, I really enjoyed these two books, like very much so. And I think that, you know, getting a little bit of, you know, I feel in these books we get a little bit of everything, right? Whereas some other books we read, like you know, we miss out on Michael for 2 books or whatever else. You know, we don't see him. We got the, you know, the Black and Denarius guys, we got the Knights, we got the Fae, we got Murphy, and we see Molly for a little while. And I don't know, I thought it was good. I really enjoy the ones where all these characters that we love so much, you know, we see come into play, even if it's small, right? Even if it's just for a second, like Molly's little part or whatever else. And of course, she's a crack up, so that's always good. But yeah, I like them a lot.
Were you for me, I guess, were you as surprised as I was? Like, were you surprised how much you enjoyed Death Masks?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, almost every I've read it. That was my 3rd time, and every time I read it, I get more surprised.
Okay, because like I feel like I always like glance over it, and like I don't really give it that much thought.
Yeah.
And after reading it this time, like you know, we got tons of other stuff to read, but I almost want to read it again. Like I was legitimately surprised how much I really liked Death Masks. And I didn't remember liking it that much before. Like I was fine, but you know, I was really surprised how much I liked it. I think just so many things happen in that book that are really the start of the series, like, and stuff in Summer Night, but really in Death Masks, there's so many things that are the start of major things to come, like picking up the coin. Molly comes on the scene. Harry gets the Fidelicius that he, you know, has for the next few books. And we kind of get to see where that goes. That's a major plot device. And just like all these things, like him telling Murphy about the supernatural world and cluing her in more, like that becomes a huge part of what happens later. And so these 2 books really are the foundation for what the Dresden Files becomes. And I don't think I realized that before this reread.
Yeah. No, that's good. Well said.
What last question, I think, what books that are coming up, maybe in like the next 5 books or something, what are you excited for? What are you looking forward to? What's the book that you can't wait to talk about? Besides like the very last ones, like the next handful of books.
No, for sure. See, my problem is that I cannot name them. I literally forget the order. I know what happens, but like that was probably the wrong question to ask me.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, dude. I'm gonna look through my library really quick. I'm audible.
Okay. I'll talk about mine and you tell me.
Go for it.
So for me, I am really excited to, you know, after this we have Blood Rights, and that it's not like my favorite book, but it has maybe my favorite scene in it. There's a scene that happens in Blood Rights that when I talk about it on this podcast, I guarantee you I'm going to like legitimately cry, because it's like a super important scene, and it was like a super important scene just for like my growth as a person while I was reading these books. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm excited Deadbeat has never been a favorite of mine. I think it's a fun book, but like zombies and stuff just really aren't my thing. And so I think I'm more excited to get to like Proven Guilty and White Knight, and kind of explore those a little bit more.
That's what I just saw was Proven Guilty. That's exactly what I was going to say. Proven Guilty and White Knight.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to those. And then even if you go a couple books past that, I remember when I was doing a reread last time, Turncoat, it was the same thing as Death Masks. I was really surprised how much I liked Turncoat upon reread. And so I'll be excited to get to that as well.
For sure.
So that's what you saw as Proven Guilty was your pick for the
that
next
would probably
one.
be it, yeah.
So I guess a couple things that we'll just take a second here. In our future theories section that we hardly ever do on this show, I kind of wonder if Cowell and Kumori, who we see in a later book, it's probably not going to be spoilers for the people listening. Yeah. But in this book, in Summer Night, we learn that Elaine and Harry were enthralled, or that Justin Dumorn tried to enthrall them. Yeah. And so I kind of wonder if Cowell and Kumori are a alternate Harry and Elaine that were enthralled to Justin.
That would be wild.
Yeah.
That would be wild.
Yeah, that'd be pretty insane. The other one that I think we talked about before is I would love to see a short story or a book or something where Michael, Shiro, and Sanya go on a mission together, obviously before the events of Death Masks. Yep. Or I would love to see Sanya's origin story.
I would want to see Shiro's origin story, man.
Oh,
wouldn't that be cool? But yeah, Sanya would be cool too, because Sanya, you actually get a little hint of his origin, right? Like you get or at least maybe not his origin, but the challenges that he had with picking up. Oh, never mind. Not gonna say that.
No, you're good.
Okay, did you see that?
Talked about.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. So yeah, picking up a coin.
Yeah, because he was one of the Dinarians, and then he let go of his coin and then became a knight.
Cross,
And so that would be super, super interesting to get a short story of that. He's got to do that at some point. That sounds like something he's got to do.
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah, or an alternate world where Michael's kid picked up the coin instead of Harry.
Yep.
All right, so before we roll into our outro, I'd like to say that I think from now on we decided to do one book at a time for the Dresden Files. Even this episode has gone on a little bit long. I'll probably edit it down to 2.5 hours or 2 hours and 15 minutes or something. But from now on, we'll do one Dresden Files book per episode. Our next one will be Blood Rights. And I think that's just the kind of format we'll stick to from here on out, because it gets each book gets bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
There's so much to talk about. All right, everyone. Well, that about wraps us up. Thanks so much for listening to the show. And please remember to like and subscribe down below to help out our channel, and follow our Twitter page @FilesFantasy to keep up with all of our content there. Stay tuned for our next episode featuring the author of Chaos Reigns, Jared Smith, where we will give away 2 codes for free audiobooks for Chaos Reigns. We're also going to be doing, we also just decided to do the Lightbringer series, which I think I mentioned in the intro. So stay tuned for that. Maybe read Lightbringer ahead of time. We'll probably get to that in maybe like 3 weeks or so. All right, until next time, I don't believe in fairies.